Welcome back to the Augustana Observer podcast. I'm the Multimedia section editor, Jaren Smith. I'll let my friends here introduce themselves.
Hey, I'm the co-host, Dippi Sharma.
Hi, I'm Aaron Rogers, the Vice President of the Student Investment Fund here at Augustana.
It's great to, get to meet you, get to talk to you, because I know we had a little wait before we got to officially start this episode, but, we wanted to learn more about the student investment fund meetings, because I think it's a really interesting topic, and I didn't know there was, a group club on campus where that got together. So we'll go with the first question. Why was the Student Investment Club started, and how long has it been a thing?
So the Student Investment Fund actually started about 14 years ago, believe it or not. Surprisingly, we don't have that many members for how long the club's been around for. But on the Board of Trustees, Kenny Abrams donated $60,000 to the college in order to start this fund. And the club was actually started by a vice president at J.P. Morgan named Allison Martinez. So she founded the club, basically gathered people up, and it was a very technical club for the years that she was here. And it's basically transitioned into being a more fundamental financial club. So that's about how it got started, and I got involved just because I'm majoring in finance, and I've always been an investor for all my life. So
that's nice. So what are the goals of these club meetings that you have, or what are some things that you guys do?
Well, I would say that there's two goals for the club. One is to learn, and one is to be able to communicate with each other. I just spoke with the CFO of John Deere today, actually. I work at John Deere, and he had mentioned that the technical skills aren't as important as the soft skills. So not only is the Student Investment Fund really hitting on the hard skills, the technical valuation of stock and things of that nature, but it's also hitting on the soft skills, presenting in front of people, trying to sell people and convince them on something. So I guess the way that I see the club going is that it's something that can really advance your career, and it looks phenomenal on an application. So,
you mentioned earlier that investing is something that you've been doing your entire life.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get into investing, say, before Augustana? Because I feel like me, for example, I don't know that much about it, and what we were speaking a little bit, before we started recording, is that it's like students managing their money. So, how did you get into, say, investing?
Well, if you saw the way I dress, you'd probably think I'd say my dad or something, just because you think I'm wealthy. But actually, no, I started off really low on the socioeconomic level, and I got lucky, I guess, and my best friend's dad was a multi-million-dollar investor. So I learned from him for the longest time, and I just saw the opportunities that it gave people for lifelong wealth and generational wealth, right? So I guess I saw that opportunity, and it all made sense, and it's proven at this point. There's no gambling to it, really. It is what it is. You are going to be wealthy if you go down this path.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear, and I feel like all a lot of people can ask for in life, no matter what field they get into, is just an opportunity. Because I feel like this school, Augustana, has provided many students in the present, in the past, and in the future, a lot of opportunities for themselves to grow. And I think it's up to, each person when presented with opportunity to kind of just take off with it. And that sounds like what you did, and that sounds phenomenal.
What's interesting, though, is that you say that opportunity to grow, right? 14 years ago, we were given $60,000. Talk about growing, it's over $200,000 now. So right there is just an example of how the Student Investment Fund not only teaches you to grow, but you also how to grow your money. So
that's awesome. I was gonna say, because $60,000 to $200,000, and you mentioned that with 14 years, even though that the club is not to the size that you'd like it, that's still very impressive. So just want to say congratulations for that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So I am so lost about investing. So how do you guys go about the process of how you invest, or where you invest, and how do your meetings typically run?
So I guess there's two parts to that question. One is, how do you get starting investing on an individual level, and then how do our clubs go? So I'll start with the club first of all. Typically our meetings we go sector by sector. So there's You could break down the stock market, thousands and thousands of companies, right, into a few sectors. For example, I focus on industrials, companies like Boeing, John Deere, General Electric. And we analyze each sector, the news that had happened over the last few days. And then we take a look at the portfolio. We say, hey, are there any moves that we want to make? And then we transition into the learning aspect of the club. We also have guest speakers. For example, we have, we'll most likely have the president of NASCAR actually speaking at one of our clubs here pretty soon. A connection through Kirk Anderson, the CFO of the college.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, he's also a frequenter of the meetings, so he's a phenomenal connection to get to know. He knows everybody, it seems like. John Delaney as well, he's another professor here that is very well connected. So that's kind of how the meetings go. A lot of opportunity to learn at the meeting. But to get started investing on your own, you open up what's called a brokerage account. And there's numerous different ways you can do this. You can go through Fidelity, you can go through Charles Schwab. There's big names. I mean, if you just look up investment brokerage account, something will come up. And a good way to do it is to just take a chunk of your paycheck and say, I will never see this money, right? So let's say I get my paycheck on the 15th and the 30th biweekly, and I say, okay, I'm going to take 20% of this paycheck. I'll never get it. Well, you never see that money, and we'll talk about picking stocks later, I'm sure. So you'll never see this money, but eventually you're going to look at it in 40 years, you're 60 years old, when most people aren't ready to retire because they don't have enough money, and you're going to be sitting on $5-6 million. That's the way people normally say how their investing career goes over time.
Yeah, that's awesome, and I think that's like what you've been mentioning, regards to say like what happens at these meetings. I think they're really important skills, and you kind of it sounded like to me you started to touch on it, because with getting paid twice a month, like use your example with the 15th and the 30th, because especially as a student, whether you live on campus and you have an on-campus job, or you live off campus and you say you live in an apartment. I feel like a lot of students, this does include myself, like, yes, we learn from our parents is like, okay, these are good money habits versus these are some bad money habits. But I feel like they don't really go too in depth with it. So how does the Student Investment Fund Club, how does money management, how is that stressed, if it is stressed in the club?
I would say that money management is just as important as investing is. So for example, we just actually held a multiple session seminar on credit cards, for example. Credit cards are both a tool and something that can really bring you down if you don't use them correctly. That's just one aspect of money management. Another thing, budgeting. We talk about budgeting at the club. This is not information that you're expected to know coming into the club. It's really open for all levels of knowledge. But we do hit on all of these points, like I said, budgeting, credit cards, things of that nature, paying for your first car, getting a mortgage. While we're only 20 years old, the president and I both have some pretty extreme knowledge just from the experience that we've gotten in the field that we work in. So, so you learn all aspects of money management, not just investing.
That's awesome. And I feel like another thing, what sounds great is that you're saying that doesn't matter where your knowledge is from. Everyone will have the opportunity to start from, say, level 1 and get to the boss level. So I think that's awesome.
So, since you've been part of the club for so long, how has it helped you? Out of your, you came up with your individual knowledge, but how has the club helped you grow?
Well, for me, I joined last year. Obviously, I was a freshman last year. And I got to see how Ray ran the club. He was a good presenter, and I've taken some of his skills and applied them myself. So I guess what I've learned, I'm pretty in tune with the financial part of the club. So I haven't learned quite as much on that aspect, but the idea of leadership, right? So I think that we have 7 positions that are leadership positions in the club, whether it be secretary, PR people, portfolio manager. I guess what I've learned is leadership and how to lead a group of people. We're doing conferences in Miami. We're going to Chicago to meet these higher ups in financial advising. And, these people look at me and they say, okay, you're the leader of all 20 of these people. So I guess that's one aspect that I've learned is leadership. Yeah.
Kind of transitioning into the next subject, what is something that you would say about the club that you would like people to know about the club? Whether that be something you mentioned earlier, or maybe something you hadn't gotten into yet, such as like, because you mentioned stocks earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So what is something that you would like people to know about the club?
Well, as I had mentioned earlier, everybody is welcome, no matter what your knowledge level is on the topic. It is not just the student investment fund anymore. I had mentioned that when Allison started the club, it was very technical. And Ray is a quadruple major.
Wait,
yeah,
quadruple?
Quadruple major, yes.
I have respect for, though, because I'm a double major, I have respect for doing triple, quadruple, anything past that. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Well, a quadruple major on top of being the president of this club. So he's a very busy person, but one thing that does come along with that level of education is he's very technical in the way that he speaks and in front of the club. A lot of time you lose people along that way once you start speaking so technically. So I'm kind of taking it back to a fundamental level, right? So if I wanted people to know something about the club, it would be that you are not just going to learn about investing, about some crazy valuation methods that people on Wall Street use. You may learn that eventually at a certain point, but we're going to make sure that you get there and you know all the components that it takes to get to that point.
I think that's a great strategy. Not to say that the president, being technical doesn't have a great strategy. I just think that to like what you were saying, like the goal and then like everyone's welcome. I feel like from me learning about it, I feel it's more open because you mentioned like the technical, like sometimes the president had kind of steered people away. Mm-hmm. I think both of you having him being more technical and you being more fundamental, I think that's a great combo that both of you kind of have and bring to the group. And I feel like that has meshed really well together. So another congratulations.
Yeah, so thank you.
Since you don't have a lot of people in your club, like would you encourage students to join your club more, and like why? Because I feel like investment is a bit intimidating. Like me being really young, like investment, like the whole word is too intimidating for me. But I do want to start investing since, like you said, in like 60 years, I'll have like $5 to $6 million. And that's like a good amount of money. So how would you like go about that?
Well, I think you just said it yourself, right? In 40 years, you're going to have $5 to $6 million. If that's not already enticing enough, then I don't know what is. But this is just a fundamental part of life, right? So companies aren't offering pension funds anymore. Companies aren't pushing their 401ks as much, which is typically how people in previous generations would build wealth. So you have to do it yourself. Your parents aren't going to teach you, right? I mean, a lot of us have Gen X parents that weren't taught this stuff. So I think that's one part of the club that should be enticing to all of the student body. Somebody that's young, I say that the younger that you start investing, the better. If you know how compound interest works, it basically is compounding on top of the previous year's money. So let's say you put in $5,000 and you give a 10% interest rate. This isn't technical, don't worry. The next year you'll have $5,500. And then, of course, you would get interest the following year. But it would not be interest on the $5,000. It would be on the $5,500, right? So then you get $550 instead of $500. So it's that kind of thing. So the younger, the better. Freshman to senior, everybody's welcome. I would encourage seniors, if you haven't done any investing yet, to join, to learn as much as you can. That way you're prepared for the next 40 years.
Honestly, I'll make sure I take that because I'd say the biggest investment that I've made in my life, I can name two. One is a physical thing and one, actually, they both my physical things. The biggest investment I've made is in myself by putting myself out there to being open to learning about different things because I feel a lot of people when they think of investments, they think of, like the money aspects, but we ourselves, we are investments also. We have to invest our time in things. The second thing, which is a more physical thing, I'd say my car. I worked my butt off for my car and it's not even it's not a brand new car. It's not a 2020. It's not a super nice car. I have a Honda Accord 2009, and Honda. A lot of people say with like cars like Honda that they're built to last a while. You know, they're very well made cars, and I don't drive that much. So I plan to. It was one of the best investments I ever made, and I feel like if I can keep that car until I run into the dirt, it will have been a very good investment.
That's awesome. Congratulations. Yeah, I relate to that completely. I got blessed with a wonderful job at John Deere in the tax department, and I recently just bought a 2024 Corolla. So at 20 years old, being able to buy a new car with nobody else's help, right? I mean, that's
amazing.
That's just unbelievable. And the way that I view it, that's an investment. You know, I may hand that down to my kids someday. So, just as you said, there's multiple sorts of investing. You invest in yourself, going to the gym, reading a book, things like that. So we talk about that stuff at the investment club, of course. So
that's awesome. Here's another good question, because you were mentioning this a little bit earlier, because you mentioned that the president of NASCAR is a frequent visitor at the meetings. What are some other things that say that the people who are currently in the club can expect, and those who might be interested in joining? Maybe any special events that are in the works that you can share with us?
Well, let me make sure of one thing, that the president of NASCAR is a very busy person.
Very true.
So I would not clarify him as a frequenter, but through Kirk Anderson, we do have a connection with him that we could get in contact and learn a little bit of his perspective on the finance world. I don't know. We do have a pretty big conference plan for this next year. I think that funding is going to go through for it. We're working pretty closely with Kirk on that, but possibly a conference down in Miami, which, you know, if you can get 10, 15 people that are part of leadership down to Miami, that starts to spread the word of the club pretty quickly. So that's just a phenomenal opportunity. If you are in finance, accounting, economics, business management, Miami's where the money's at. Okay, so you're going to meet some people down there that are very cool, but that's a great opportunity coming up at the club. So.
That's awesome, and I hope everything goes the way it needs to go to, so that everyone can travel down there. And also, thank you for clarifying about the president of NASCAR thing. So, Mr. President of NASCAR, if you're listening, I apologize for any potential confusion I might have caused.
That is really interesting, because I am triple majoring, and one of my majors is economics. So I might be there down in Miami with you guys. So when do you guys have your meetings? Because it is a club, so how frequently does it occur and everything?
So twice a week. We have numerous posters around campus, just to kind of spread the word on that a little bit. But twice a week, Monday, Thursday at 6 p.m. in Lindbergh 202. Same classroom every week. We're also going to have some virtual meetings here pretty quickly, because we're going to have some guest speakers. The CEO and president of the Certified Financial Advisors Society is going to be joining us today, actually, at 6 o'clock. So that'll be a virtual meeting. So, yeah, like I said, there's posters all around campus, but some virtual ones as well. So.
That's awesome. And before transitioning into another area, I have to ask this. Yeah. What are your majors? Because you just mentioned you're planning on being a triple major. So really, I'm about to give a huge shout out to the both of you. What are your current majors, if you don't mind sharing those with us?
So I'm going to keep on going down the ladder. You got the president's a quadruple major, and you're a triple major. I'm only a double major.
That's still impressive.
Yeah, I'm finance and accounting, and that doesn't. I guess after listening to you guys, it doesn't sound like too much, but here's the deal. Working at John Deere does take quite a bit of my time. Mm-hmm. I work about 25 hours a week there in the finance treasury department. And I'm also on the golf team here on campus. So I try to keep my days filled.
Yeah, you've got a lot of things going on, which, again, I'm going to give you the same respect as if you were a quadruple major. And even those who are not double majors, they still get my respect, because being a full-time student, even a part-time student, maintaining all these other relationships and outside activities, that's a lot. And you mentioning having a job, which I relate to, also working at Channel 6, doing, the Observer stuff as we're talking through it right now. I understand completely,
Mm-hmm.
and don't sell yourself short because you're doing incredible things.
Well, thank you.
Now a question for my co-host, because I've never officially asked my co-host a question. If you don't mind, what are your majors?
I'm majoring in economics and multimedia journalism and mass communications with a pre-law track.
Well, both of you deserve an amazing shout out because, like, also, I'm a senior. I'm getting ready to graduate in a month and a half, and sometimes I don't even actively think about this, and to not get off track too much, I'm an MJMC and comm double major with a minor in creative writing. MJMC in communication, you get credit for it at almost the same time. So makes it very easy to double major with that. And the creative writing minor, I just so happened to take a lot of those classes, and a friend was like, Jaren, you should at least minor in this. You're already halfway done. I was like, okay. 2 years later, here I am. But both of you deserve shout outs for everything that you're doing because, both of you are going to I'm going to do my best, keep my fingers crossed and manifest positive energy to both of you as you continue to journey throughout August.
Thank you.
Do you have any other questions that you'd like to ask about the finance club?
Just any advice for any student at Augustana like me who's so lost about investments, because I do want to start investing, and like you said, like a bi-weekly paycheck, just 20% off of it would make so much. So where would you suggest start investing, or like how can we research about it or go about it?
I think a good start is to first of all come to the club meetings. If you can communicate with me or Ray, who's the president of the club, you will learn a lot quicker than what you will online. There's a lot of bad information online, so you must be careful of that. And if you come to the clubs, me and Ray would be very willing to sit down and walk you through whatever you may need to just get your brokerage going. Don't put your money in a savings account would also be another piece of advice that I would have for people looking to get into investing. Your savings account doesn't earn you any money. Okay, you're earning a 0.1%. Well, in the stock market, sometimes you're earning 20%, 30%. That stacks up pretty quick. So my two pieces of advice: don't have a savings account and come to the meetings. So.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, those are two great pieces of advice. Is there anything else that you would like to add about, like the club, or say like anything important or that you also want to add about investing? Because those are all the questions we both seem to have.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have anything else besides come to the meetings and just take the opportunity to learn and grow financially and as a person. You learn great presenting skills at the club and investing skills. So it's a phenomenal opportunity for all students.
Awesome. Just thank you for your time today.
Thank you guys.
Really, really appreciate it.